Terry Brown, the legendary record producer who has worked from the late 60s all the way to now, still making music, still the cutting edge. He's worked with bands like The Who and most notably Rush, all the way from Fly By Night all the way to Signals. He's made countless hit records, and I got to interview him, and it's coming right up. Terry Brown, it's so amazing to see you after all these years. I think it's been 28 years. So tell me, how have you been?
I've been good. 28 years. I find that hard to believe. But yeah, no, I'm good. Thank you. Yeah.
And it's really great to have you on this blog. I wanted to ask you questions mostly because you have been had this very what I think is a privilege of seeing the world of rock and pop and just world of recording from the very early days all the way to now. And I was actually fascinated. I didn't know that you were engineer on Substitute by The Who.
Yes, that was my very first session.
And that's incredible. I mean, back then, was that at the Olympic?
Yeah, Old Olympic in Carlton Mews, just off Baker Street.
And so people don't realize that Olympic Studios was almost as groundbreaking in terms of the people they recorded as Abbey Road. It's like the unsung hero.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there were a few independent studios, and Olympic was one of them. And yeah, we did a lot of great records there.
And you worked on some of Hendrix's records as well?
That was at the New Olympic,
Okay.
and I only worked on one track.
Okay.
Eddie Kramer was busy one night and he said, would I sit in? So, and yeah, sure, no problem. I mean, Jimmy used to hang out at the studio and we used to sit on the stairs and have coffee and chat during the
Right.
day. And so I knew him, but it wasn't anything super exciting for me at the time. I mean,
Right.
now, of course, it's like a whole different story. But at the time, it was like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure, no problem. So I ended up recording Axis, the opening of the album.
That's and
Mm.
so when back then when you had like these people that we now know as these legends, like The Who, I think they had My Generation was the only hit before that.
You could be right. Yeah, yeah.
Did you move to Canada at that point?
I came to Canada on January the 1st, 1969, and with a view to building a studio with Doug Riley. He was the catalyst in me coming here. We worked together at New Olympic, doing a whole slew of commercials, and we had such a great time together that when I called him up about a year later, we sort of connected again, and then I came over.
And then you came over, and then so Rush recorded at that studio, and that's how you met them.
Yeah, that was a little later, but you know, prior to that, I did Motherload with Doug, and that was something pretty special.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So in that era, like so you came from the world of obviously tape and everything being analog. And I remember from our time working with you that you had a real uh you had a love for getting the sound of the instrument sounding good at the source. And I think that now with with digital and everything and plugins, a lot of people don't realize how important that is. So could you tell me a little bit about like how important that was then and how what you think about it being important now in terms of getting the source good?
Well, I still believe that's an important thing, and I'm still doing stuff that way. I have to be honest. Recording drums and guitars, bass, in any instrument, it's got to sound good at the source. Otherwise, you end up struggling with it throughout the mix, which is not a good idea.
And was that sort of like recognizing that thing? Was that something that you just always had? You felt you had a knack for, like you could hear that in a way a player played, or what instrument they were using, or how? Because they say it's in the hands. Were you able to recognize that?
Well, yeah, I mean, musicians have a way of developing their sound, be they, guitar players or drummers or, wind instruments or whatever. They develop a sound and they have to be captured. So in order to capture it, you've got to hear the sound in the studio, very important, or in the environment that you're recording in, and get it right there. And if it doesn't sound right, it needs fixing before you start recording. Otherwise, you'll never, you just go around in circles trying to fix it afterwards.
Well, when I when we were working with you through Nick Eden in Cutting Crew and what
Yeah,
ended up being Gritting Souls, I didn't realize in my mid-20s how much I was like you would go and say, no, that's not the right snare. Let's try a different one. That's not the right. We would spend all this time, and I didn't realize how important that was until much later in my life. And because in your 20s you just want to get the song, you want to start playing, right?
yeah, yeah.
And then I really, and that's why I thanked you on my album in 2013 when I actually decided to do it to tape. And I thought, my goodness, you have to really, really focus. You have to absolutely get your part correct. There's no screwing around. And I didn't realize that back then. So I guess I'm in a long-winded way. I'm apologizing if we were hasty at the time. Um,
No, I mean, no apology needed, but I mean, it is important to have those elements correct before you start. I was thinking about that just the other day when I was recording Tiles about 15, actually must have been 15 years ago now. And the drummer, Pat, he had a good sound and we were getting a good drum sound, but his snare sound just didn't really do it for me. So I ended up getting a new snare for him from the local music store. I think it was a Vinnie Caliuta custom. And it sounded great, but Pat couldn't get his head around the fact that that's not me, that's not my sound, which I understand, and that does enter into it.
it fascinates me how much sometimes a musician will get lost in their own little world, and then a producer comes along and says, this is the song, I've got a big bird's eye view of this.
Yeah.
I think we should, maybe we should try this or try that. And I've always felt like over the course of time of playing music that production is such an essential component. Like a lot of people say, oh, it'll work just with the piano and the vocal. But then once you start putting all the layers on it, there's so many emotional variables that come into play with all the choices that a producer will make that it actually affects the song so greatly. It could make or break the song. And
Oh, for
so,
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Every time you put something new into the equation, it changes the way you hear the song. So,
so when it came to these guys, Rush, how, you were credited as being sometimes helping with arranging or even singing backing vocals and stuff like that. Like, how much time did they spend in the studio before, jamming? Like, how much time did you give them to go work it out?
well, it varied. I mean, in the early days, we would have such a short window to record an album, like Fly By Night. It would be I wouldn't have heard any of the tunes prior to them coming in because they were on such a tight schedule, touring and what have you. So they'd come in, I'd hear the tunes, we'd do pre-production in the studio, record the album, and mix it in like what, a maximum of 2 weeks.
Wow. Wow. That's
So
amazing.
that was a different story. But then as later on in their career, they would work out things in sound check and be way, way more prepared
Right.
and do demos, good demos too.
Yeah.
So I would get to hear them prior to going in the studio and be familiar with the songs.
I want to play just the very beginning of Tom Sawyer for a second for you, just to ask you a question about it. The drums being so loud there, like, the snare is so present.
Mean stride, today's Tom Sawyer, mean pride.
This is before the Hugh Padgham days where, like when you listen to Police records and Stuart Copeland's snare is just so present. In
Yeah.
this era, this at this time in 1980, was that just a kind of a thing? Like, was that the sound, this very, very forward drum set?
I'm not so sure, really. I mean, it just seemed right. I mean, I think it sits in the mix correctly.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah,
And, capturing Neil's sound was very important.
yeah. And
Um,
was that something that you guys worked together on a lot? Like the
well, we went in that particular case, we went in, I think it was on a Friday, we loaded in. And on Friday night, we spent the evening getting the drum sound. And then we went back in on Saturday lunchtime and we recorded Tom Sawyer.
seriously,
Yeah.
just an evening, and then that was it. The next,
Yeah. Well, I mean, bear in mind that Neil's kit was in really great shape.
right?
It wasn't the first time we'd recorded it. And he had a drum tech who understood what was going on. And the drums were perfectly tuned.
Yeah,
And then he would rehearse and, certain things that were bugging him that he wasn't really comfortable with, he'd rehearse and get himself together. And then he'd go, okay, I'm ready to do something. And we'd start cutting the track.
right. And then you cut that as a bed with the three of them, and then
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then and then maybe Alex would have done overdubs after, or
We would overdub bass and guitars.
bass and guitars instead.
Yeah. But we'd have the original guitar and bass with the kit as a reference.
Okay, yeah.
So it would
No,
all work. We knew it would work.
did you ever think that that when you were doing that album that it would become such a Canadian icon of an album? Like, every kid, especially me and my friends, if you didn't learn Rush songs, then you weren't learning how to play your instrument.
That's great.
Did you ever think that you were, that you would be part of such a legacy like that?
No, I never thought of it quite in those terms, but I was always very optimistic about stuff that I did. I mean, even stuff that didn't actually make it, I
Right.
was convinced it was worthy of making it.
Sure.
I always had this feeling that if I liked it, there's got to be 1,000 kids out there down the road who'd like it too.
On this album, everything is very natural sounding. How important was capturing what was in the room onto the medium at the time, and not thinking about fixing it in the mix? Like, I know that you're kind of a producer that really wants to
Yeah.
capture what's there.
I'm not really into fixing it in the mix. I mean, I do that because I get to do a lot of different things and I don't get to record all of them. And I haven't actually done any production for a while now, in other than with David Barrett, the David Barrett Trio, and that's a real treat because Paul DeLong is a drummer, and he's got such a great sound and such a great player, and Scott the bass player and David's guitar playing and his sounds. So that's really cool. But yeah, I don't like fixing things in the mix, especially if it's my own stuff. I'd like to be able to get the sounds off the floor.
Like, doing a lot of digital stuff, like especially when I was doing film work, you're solitary, you're kind of mixing things, using a lot of plug-in software instruments. What I found as time went on was that it got very clinical, and the personality was out of it. And until I started like getting back to my roots and playing guitar more, and practicing and practicing and practicing to try and go to tape, the commitment to putting it down quickly. And I feel like that's something that I took for granted when we were recording way back when, with you, is because you coming from that world is like, get it right and then print it. And now people do a lot of fixing and editing and stuff like that. And I didn't realize how important that was until many more years later.
Yeah, it is important. But I think you can still do it in a digital medium, but you just have to have the right sort of approach. You know, there's a little too much of fix it later. You
Yeah,
know, like that Pro Tools joke. The band plays track, producer says that was horrible. Come and listen,
right.
because you can fix it. I mean, the amount of tools that we have at our disposal
Yeah.
is quite frightening.
Have you ever seen that video where there's an A&R guy or someone standing next to an engineer and he's sweating, and then the camera pans through the glass, and the singer, it just sounds absolutely awful as it goes through the glass, and then it comes back in and
I haven't.
it sounds absolutely perfect. With everything becoming so easy to do, like these days, with the whole world of AI coming into like a tsunami, how important do you think it is for people to get back to those roots of performance and playing and capturing?
Oh, I think it's vitally important. And I think, when you look at the artists that are at the top of their game, they're really singing, they're really playing, and they're really doing it. Now they're using technology, no doubt about it. There's a lot of give and take. You've got to know what you're doing before you can do it.
And I guess, did you feel that when computers came in, and quantizing and the digital world, like in the mid '80s, did you find that there was a lot of, in the industry, a lot of pushback as well at that time?
Uh, in terms of wanting to do it or not wanting to do it,
In terms of being scared of it, like sort of, or not, or being
I
negative
don't
about it,
know.
like,
I mean, I always remember this is a very sort of quick anecdote, but I went into a studio one day where they were rehearsing a band, and there was a rumor that they wanted me to produce them. I think I'm not really sure, but I remember looking at the screen, and the drum tracks were black from beginning to end, and I'm like, that's the drum tracks. So where's the snare and and then we zoomed in, and there
okay,
they were.
wow,
The fact was it had been what do you call it? Beat Doctor, I think it's called.
okay, yeah,
And so every beat was put on the grid.
right,
Yeah, which I
and it
thought was
didn't have any,
hilariously funny, and I couldn't take them seriously after that. So, needless to say, we didn't work together.
right, right, yeah, because that those things, it does take away
It
that
does.
natural push and pull.
I've tried it. I mean, you've really got to know what you're doing. My studio partner Russ is really smart with that stuff, and he'll do it when he has to do it in order to build a drum track. But he does it in such a way that you would never know. It
Right,
sounds natural and very organic.
yeah,
But when you take a track and you go zzz, and put
right.
all the notes on the grid, it just doesn't work.
When I was doing, when I do orchestral stuff, one of the mistakes that people I find make is they quantize all the start of when the strings happen, but an orchestra never starts at the same time. Like
Uh,
all the players always start. So one of my tricks was to kind of
Yeah, it's
kick the
like
sample.
tuning. If you tune all the string parts that you've overdubbed, it doesn't sound like a string section anymore.
Right, right,
I learned that really quickly. It's like, oh yeah, we can tune that. But it's like, oh, sounds like two violins.
right. So some of the new technologies that have come out, like over the years, you've got software instruments. People are used to, new types of sounds, pedals, all of that stuff that musicians are kind of into. But in terms of production, there's been also a lot of other, groundbreaking things that have happened, like Dolby and whatever. And you have experience with Dolby Atmos. So tell me something about that.
Well, I should clarify. Experience with Dolby Atmos is limited. We just mixed. Actually, it was last year. Now it was last this time last year we started mixing. The Let me see. It was the Grace Under Pressure tour that hit Maple Leaf Gardens in 1984.
Okay.
So we remixed the whole show in Dolby Atmos. So that was a real treat.
Amazing.
And since then, the software's been getting updated monthly, weekly. I mean, almost daily. It's crazy what's going on in that realm.
Right.
So I've now got to the point where I'm not doing any stereo mixing anymore.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
I've cut myself off. No more stereo mixing.
That
So I'm doing it in Dolby Atmos, and then the fold down from the Dolby Atmos is the stereo mix.
okay.
And we've got it down now. And Russ, my studio partner, he's done a lot of thorough examination of what's available, how to get things to work properly, and we've got it down really well now.
So a listener will have to have a Dolby Atmos system to be able to render that in their space, right?
To listen, yeah, but you can listen on a pair of headphones and you can stream it off Apple and other streaming companies. But I have an Apple thing, so
Right. You're probably gonna can't unhear it. It's like it sounds better that way.
yeah,
Like
I
finding a
agree.
fine wine or something.
Yeah, exactly. But I still drink Plonk.
Okay, so a track that every musician tried, and I was never successful in being able to play Alex's stuff on this, but is YYZ. So
Are you actually playing vinyl?
I am. So this track it's there's just so much virtuosity in it. You know, how much did these guys practice to play a piece like this? Were they playing it live on stage for weeks and then it was just an easy thing to do in the studio, or?
No, it wasn't an easy thing to do in the studio at all. It was quite difficult. But and it took quite a while to put it together. But you know, we were looking for something special,
Yeah.
and the guys knew what they wanted to put on there. So
Right.
once we got Neil's part down, it was a question of just woodshedding the bass and guitars.
Like let's say you got a really great bed track of that on rhythm, and then you just had to do like was it because it was done in that way that you wanted to get a better tone out of the bass and the guitar?
Well, accuracy, tone, yeah, everything. But I mean, I was of the mind that, you know, you need to focus on the bass part, you know, and the sound of it and the way it's played and delivered, little, like really subtle details. But when you're doing them as overdubs, you can do that. So, I mean, it's not unlike doing a little bit of digital work because you could do two or three bass parts, and you could say, you know, when we get to the B part of the melody, it's way better on take three than it was on take one. So why don't we just pop that into the master track? So there was some, you know, editing and stuff, but you know, I wanted it to be perfect, I guess.
I remember we were recording some of the demos for the Mirror stuff, or the band, like when we were
Hmm.
when you were helping us with that. And I'll never forget you said, "Okay, guys, go get some lunch. I need to go and work on that tape machine." And you had opened it up, and you were wanting to redo the alignment on the machine because
Oh,
it
was that
wasn't set.
right?
Yeah, and I'll never forget that because I thought, wow, that machine is another instrument really. To you, it forged the sound that you were trying to capture.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if the machines in the old days with analog, if the machine wasn't set up properly, you don't get back what you're putting in, you know. And I mean, already it's changing things and coloring, but it needs to be in a good way,
Yeah,
which is what we all love about analog tape. But if it's not set up properly, it can make a real mess of things, and you can't
right.
fix it,
And you can't.
you know, because it's not something you can just go over and sort out. You know, once it's on there,
Were
you're
you very
done.
hands-on, say, on an album like this as well, like just making sure? Because I mean, you had the wealth of knowledge all through the evolution of machines up to that point to the 80s.
I didn't get involved in the machines there. I mean, I'd be listening. So if I heard something I didn't like, I would talk to them. But they had a really good staff of techs
This is at
and
more
the
in
machine
La
at
Studio.
yeah, the studio, Morin Heights, and they would they would fix it. Yeah.
A tune like that, like were they at it for days or was it hours or?
Well, days really. I mean, because we'd work reasonable hours. We used to work from 12 till 6, and then we'd have dinner until 8, and then we'd work from 8 till 2.
Okay, yeah. So
So it
those
was
are, yeah,
a reasonably good day. And but I mean, you have up and downs, like not really happening. Let's take a little break, let's come back to it. So, but overall, we would spend as long as it took to make it right and to get it where everybody had a big grin on their face and like, wow, this sounds fantastic.
yeah,
And
that
if we weren't saying that, we wouldn't accept it.
right.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. It's a privilege to talk to someone who was involved with these projects, and it's a, for back in the day, I of course I knew what what we who we were getting to work with back then, but as time goes on and these albums that you were part of became such legends, especially even with Cutting Crew. I these days I say I'm so lucky to have been working with Nick and you guys and seeing
Yeah.
what the power of a song like "Died in Your Arms" can do. You're just at a party sitting around and Nick decides to pick out the guitar and I take another one and we start playing that song and literally everybody just does that
Yeah.
because it was
Yeah.
such,
Yeah. It's one of those special songs.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it must be great to have that, feeling of being part of all of those.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was talking to, well, over text with Ray Montfort. He's in Mexico. He's a wonderful guitar player. I've done a bunch of stuff with him, and he's down there and he texted me and said, I was just having my coffee this morning and walking onto the beach and I heard "Died in Your Arms." He said, I thought you might like to know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it pops up a lot. I hear it on the radio in Toronto a lot. Yeah.
It is one of those songs I think that we'll be playing. It's the 80s. It's in those top songs that people.
Yeah, isn't it? I know it's part of the Million Play Club 3 times, I think, if I'm not
Wow.
mistaken. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much once again for taking the time to talk a bit of shop with me after all this time, and it's really an honor to have you on this show, and especially seeing your history and everything that you've experienced. So I want to thank you once
Well,
again,
thank you.
Kerry.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
pleasure.
and remember, there's a Sri Lankan curry for you waiting here in house
Yes,
when you next come.
I won't forget that.
All right, thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thanks, Asif.